on the last mile, the wireless last mile, and Ted, I understand your point on it is that it's an order of magnitude in terms of the capital cost, and that we're going to have to live with wireless. Yeah. Has there has there been a determination made on what that wireless is? Is it going to be 5G? And if so, how do we keep the big incumbents from coming in here and just taking over the whole damn thing like they've done in the past with wired and other forms of connectivity?
I think we all share those concerns, and I haven't seen any answers yet.
Okay.
But I'm just putting together the amount that the county will receive, whether we administer it directly or we work under a JPA. It wouldn't come close to implementing the existing plans.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I don't think there's a more creative way to reduce those costs. I think Tom would have done it if such a concept could exist. And so, if we're looking at 5%, maybe 10% of the funds to do this fiber build out, I wouldn't want to begin, not have anybody connected and say, well, we got part of the infrastructure and we're waiting for the other 90%. Versus like working with wireless carriers, we can probably cover most of the population with the funds that have been allocated.
You know what, a good analogy that would support that position, Ted, is that really nice railroad station that they built in Cloverdale.
Yeah. So we're going to need as much help as we can get, a real collaborative process when we explain to the public the funds that we have and how we think we can best utilize those. I know some people will not be excited about wireless network and argue that it should be fiber and it should be underground. There's also arguments on the coast against aerial fiber. We need to, as clearly as possible and as transparently as possible, explain this is what's coming. We don't expect another round. We think this is the funding we have to work with. And either we deploy broadband or we don't. But it's kind of pie in the sky, the idea that we're going to have $46,000 per house for the entire county to bring fiber. And I think West, Mary Ann's on this call, West has some creative ideas about how to begin that messaging and build momentum for what connectivity can do for our community, for all aspects, education, business, just quality of life. And I think we'll be able to leverage that to here's a plan that'll actually allow us to fulfill those ideas.
That segue, Mary Ann.
Jeff, I just had a clarifying question. When you said they're somewhere between 35 million and 70 million, was that only for middle mile? And then the 5 million was for the last mile? Or was that 5 million part of the 35 to 70?
The 35 to 70 was for last mile. The middle mile which was what was shown in the map, is some dollar amount that the state will manage out of the 3.25 billion. So what I think that the middle mile costs will be equal to or greater than the last mile dollars that were being allocated. So there is likely between the last mile and the middle mile going to be $150 million invested in Mendocino County's broadband infrastructure. Okay. And again, the last mile is what we have control over, and that control might be ceded to RCRC.
And do you know, like, when do you know what is going to be allocated? Is there a time that you would know?
The middle mile, well, I don't actually know when they're going to reveal that date. There are middle mile advisory committee meetings monthly, and
so yeah, the only reason why I'm asking this, and this is not, I'm not technical to know whether this is right or not, but I do know EDA funding is out for middle mile work. So if we need more funds in addition to what potentially could come to us, we should take advantage of the EDA funding specifically for middle mile. That's all they fund. So just FYI. And then the second point I wanted to make regarding the JPA and the RCRC, and this goes to Katie's point, I think, about who's doing this. Since you have all these, this money is coming down, and you're going to need deployment, you may want to be looking across the county today and bolster one entity who can become your lead agency in partnership with RCRC or in partnership with somebody else. We have a lot of service providers, do a lot of different things. Some are better than others. Some have more knowledge than others. But this money is coming down. Why, you might want to consider bolstering an entity now to take that on so that they're prepared to utilize the funds and expedite it and report on it.
So one difference between what we've seen in the past with in terms of guidelines for the funding is it's anticipated that the network that we're building will be municipal owned. The people will own this network as opposed to subsidizing private businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be some opportunities to partner, but I don't think we're going to infuse existing providers with funds. This isn't a grant to boost business to cover us. This is for the people to provide their own network. And the benefit is taking the profit out of it in the long term. We're going to be able to connect people at higher rates at lower costs than private industry has ever been able to do.
Great.
Ted, have we gone beyond the rule that said that if we set up a public ownership of a network, that the incumbents could come in and take it over?
Yeah,
That was a big problem at one point.
It was. I think the state has addressed that, is addressing it, and I think it's part of why we want to be one of the 37 members of this JPA, to have administration that's over all of the rural counties. When those problems arise, we're going to be so much stronger than if we were to take it on as Mendocino County. We don't have the expertise. We don't have the attorneys available. We're not watching this the same way an independent entity of 37 counties could. I think it's been one of the key pieces that's missing. The consortium was a good idea with 4 counties, but this is leveraging that same idea at much larger scale.
Amen, Ted.
Mike.
One of the things that we talked about in Sonoma County is the fact that ARPA funds will be available for the use of broadband. And that can be an additional source of funding that you may want to consider in Mendocino County as well.
That's the middle mile, I think, work for EDA. That's unless there's other ARPA funding, but that was what I was thinking of too, Mike.
Thank you. There are probably 6 additional grant opportunities, including CASIF, which will be renewed with the passage of SB4, which we have the grant application in for. So, and there's USDA grants and other broadband grants. So I think it is. So, I mean,